Webinar course, shaping the way we teach English. Webinar Wednesday.
Welcome to Shaping the Way We Teach English Webinar Course 12, brought to you by the American English team. Welcome back to all of our teachers who have been in a webinar before, and welcome to any new teachers that are joining us for the first time. Here's the Course 12 schedule, which many of you are familiar with. After today, we'll only have 2 more sessions of Course 12, one about elephants, which sounds very interesting to me, and another on how to integrate cell phones into your classroom. So we have 2 more to look forward to. Just a reminder, or for those who are new, during the webinars, you will hear but not see your presenter, and the way for you to participate is in the chat box. Of course, our presenter will not be able to answer every question because we have many teachers joining us today. So another place you can do that is on our Ning website. As many of you know, the webinar courses consist of 6 webinars. Those that participate in at least 4 out of 6 will receive an e-certificate from their regional English language officer or U.S. Embassy. To ensure that you are eligible for this e-certificate, we ask that you submit your email address at the very end of the webinar. So for individuals, meaning you are just watching this webinar on your own at your own computer, you just need to submit your email address. But for those in a group, meaning many teachers in one room together, please also include the number of participants. So I mentioned the Ning before. Hopefully all of you are members of our Ning website. This is where you can access pre-webinar readings, discussion questions, and then after the webinar you'll be able to access the recording as well as the PowerPoint. A few other ways for you to access our content are to download our mobile app, to like us on Facebook, and to follow along on our YouTube channel. You'll be able to find the webinars on YouTube as well. And finally, we encourage you to visit our website, americanenglish.state.gov, where we have so many resources for teachers and learners of English. So we look forward to seeing you there, and we're excited about our presentation today, which is entitled Active Learning in Large Classes. We know that many of you teach in large classes, so this will be great for you to share your experiences and hear what our presenter has to say about making any size class interactive. Vicki Holdridge is our presenter today. She's currently a teacher in the U.S. and was previously a Senior English Language Fellow in Peru. And Vicki is also the author of a textbook series. So without further ado, we welcome Vicki. Have a great day.
Hello everyone. Welcome and thank you for your participation. I see teachers signing in from Peru, Bolivia, Oman, Iraq. Hello to Guatemala, Paraguay. So exciting to see these countries coming in. It's wonderful to see. The title of today's webinar is Active Learning in Large Classrooms. And first of all, I just want to say, the fact that you're participating in this webinar today and taking the time out of your day to do this tells me that you're already super dedicated teachers. And we appreciate that and acknowledge that, and we're so excited to have you participating and hearing your ideas too. Active learning in large classrooms was chosen because after other webinars and presentation, teachers always come up to me and say, these are good ideas, interesting ideas, nice activities, but this would never be able to work in large class. I have 80 people, 60 people. It won't work for me. And so today we're going to find some ideas for making it work. I'd like you to take a look at this list of statements. And I wonder if you've ever had any of these thoughts or even said something like this out loud. When you were told you're teaching a class of 80 students, or when you walked into the room and saw 100 people sitting and standing in there, did you ever think, oh my gosh, I'll never be able to teach anything in a class this big. I won't be able to learn all their names, so I won't even try. This is going to be total chaos. It's impossible to have students interact in a class this size. Or finally, this is going to be a nightmare. Of course, I'm seeing responses from El Salvador. Totally, yes, I agree. Of course, we've all had these thoughts. And so the first thing that we need to do is to turn these thoughts around. We need to change our own expectations of the class and really believe in this positive way to look at it. Students will learn in this class. We will respect each other, the teacher, and the classroom. We'll enjoy this class. Believe it or not, we will succeed with the materials, time, and space that we have, and we will all learn each other's names. We have to think positively, and we have to, our emotions are contagious, and so we need to make sure that our students are catching on to this positive attitude as well. By the way, I'm talking now about having a positive attitude and being open-minded in our classes, but the same thing goes for a webinar or any workshop, professional development opportunity that you have. Sometimes we listen to a new idea, a new activity, and we right away go to the negative and think, okay, well, that won't work for me. That's nice, but that won't work for me. So what we need to do whenever we hear a new idea is instead turn it around and think, okay, how can it work for me? How can I modify this activity so it can work for my class size, my level, my teaching scenario? So don't jump right to the, no, it won't work for me. Try to think of how can it work for me. Here's an idea that I've seen going on in class. Ask students to write their name and something interesting about themselves along with a picture, and use these pictures to help practice their names. So ask students on the first day to bring in a picture of themselves, their name, and write something they're interested in, something that could set them apart from other students to help you remember, and use these pictures as flashcards. Try to practice 10, 15 new names every day, every week even. And after a few weeks, hopefully you'll have a good handle on most of the names. At least you have to try. Even if you get half the names of the people in your class, that will be worthwhile. At least we need to try. And not only do we need to try ourselves as the teachers to learn their names, but also emphasize how important it is to know each other's names and provide lots of opportunities for practicing. There are plenty of name games out there. I'm sure that you already know some of them. And I see actually some people are offering some ideas here in the chat box, which is great. Name games are great. And also just continuing throughout the semester, throughout the course, giving students on purpose the opportunity to practice each other's names in an ongoing way. Please share your tips for learning names, whether it's a name game or any other strategies that you have. Learning the names is the first step of team building, and we're going to be talking a lot more about team building throughout this webinar. I think that building a team atmosphere is super important in every class, no matter what the size, because in a language class, more than any other setting, students need to be able to feel comfortable taking risks, taking chances. We want our students to make mistakes because it means that they're comfortable and they're trying, and that's how we can learn. So any kind of team building strategy is totally worthwhile in my opinion, and learning their names is the first step. I'm seeing a lot of great ideas coming in the chat box. Thank you. The first thing that I like to do in the first day of a new course is to establish classroom expectations. Some people call these rules. I like to call them, I think saying something like expectations or agreements sounds more positive and open. So I think of whatever the most important 3 or 4 expectations for me. Yours might be different. You have to think about 3 or 4 that are most important to you. I think that if you have more than this, if you start to have a list of 10 or 12 expectations, each one loses a little bit of value. So I think it's best to narrow it down to just a few. So share these top 3 or 4 classroom expectations with the class on the first day. Ask students if they can agree with them, and then post the expectations in the room. And keep these up for the entire course. You might need to refer back to them later, and we'll talk about that. I've given an example of the classroom expectations that I've been using in my recent classes. We will all get to class on time. We will put phones away during class, and we will try our hardest. I like to keep these in a positive tone instead of a negative. Again, just it goes along with that positive atmosphere that I was talking about. Take a look at this next slide. How can we make these classroom expectations more positive? So I'm looking for your ideas in the chat box. What we have so far is students will not miss class. We will never chew gum in class. Don't talk while the teacher is talking. Show me in the chat box how you can turn these around to say essentially the same thing, but in a more positive way. Students will attend all classes. Thank you for that idea. Same thing, but just in a positive way. Listen when the teacher is talking is a positive way to say the third one, yes. Excellent. So you can see that we're saying the same thing, just a little bit differently, and it makes a big difference. In the next few slides, I'd like to talk about preparing for class. And I'm spending time on this because of the fact that teaching a large class takes a whole lot of your energy. I recognize that, and I've been there, I know. And so we need to make sure that you're putting as much of your energy into that actual class. You're going to need it. And that means that we need to make preparation and anything before class or after class as easy and as quick as possible. So what I like to do is have a set routine for each class. It does not mean that I'm doing the exact same thing in every class, of course not. But if I can just have a little bit of a template for my lesson plan that I can go back to, this is the kind of thing that I like to do. It can be changed. This is just an example. You might start with a warm-up. You might then go into a reading activity, writing activity, grammar, conversation. And so every class you can, instead of just having a totally blank slate, at least you can sit down and say, okay, I need a warm-up. What's my warm-up? Okay, next I need a reading. What's my reading? And for me anyway, it helps me save time and stay organized. Of course, it's not going to be the same reading activity every time, so don't worry about that, but it's the same kind of activity. After you have your plan for what you're going to do, you've written down your activities as you see here on my plan. I've written down what the warm-up is, I've written down what the reading activity is, etc. Now I want you to go through and visualize exactly how your lesson plan will flow. So it's not just what are the activities, but how are we going to get from one activity to the next? What's the transition? If I say that I want them to be in groups, well, how am I going to group them? If I say I want them to read the story, how are they going to read the story? Are they reading it by themselves, out loud, to a partner? What do I really mean by each of these things? So in the next couple of slides, I've broken it down and visualized exactly how it will flow and given all of these backup details. So you can see I still have my warm-up, the same activity, which was to talk to a neighbor about what you did last night. But I say a little bit more. What do I mean by that? Well, they're going to talk to the partner, and then later I'm going to ask 3 people about what their partner did. I say more about the reading activity, not just read the story on page 14, but I want them to read it silently, then listen and repeat as I read it. For the writing activity, I said that I wanted them to be in small groups, but how was I going to get them in small groups? Sometimes it's hard to think on your feet when you're in front of 80 people, so you have to have all this planned out in your head. So here's my detail. Each row will be in a group this time. They should take away the last 3 sentences of the story and add 3 new sentences. They should write their new sentences down. So a little bit more detail. You can see on the next page that I've continued in this way for the rest of my lesson plan. By the way, all these slides are going to be available to you afterwards. There's plenty of activities that I've explained in detail that you can use as a resource. So don't feel like you have to remember every step or take notes. It's all going to be available to you. Another thing about preparing for class, I think it's important to prepare anything that needs to be written on the board ahead of time. If you have to, as you see in the picture here, have your back to the class, especially in a big class, while you write out a dialogue or the vocabulary words or whatever you need to write, that can mean that the students are getting bored while they're waiting, they're maybe getting involved in other things while your back is towards them, and we're not making a good use of time. So ahead of time, you might write whatever you need to write on a chart paper and hang it up when you need it, or you could put it on the board, put it on the whiteboard, but just cover it up until you're ready for it. Anything to keep you from having your back to the students, as you see here in this picture. Another great thing about writing things on chart paper, if you're writing a dialogue on a chart paper, for example, is that then you're able to save it again for later, bring it back again the next day if you're not done with it. It's already there. Working with limited resources is a common challenge in teaching, and probably an even greater challenge when we have a large number of students, because the limited resources that we had anyway are even more limited when you have so many people. So here are some thoughts about that. If you are going to take the time, your own time after school, to create materials, which I know a lot of you do, at least make materials that you can use more than once. So you can see here in this picture that I made flashcards of silly pictures of people doing various actions. And so I did this, I created these when I was working with the present continuous. He is drinking, he is swimming, he is watching TV, etc. But I held on to them, and I made them exactly the way that I did so that I could use them again when we started working with the past tense. He drank, he swam, he watched TV. Then we can use them again for the future, many other things. So if you're going to take the time to create materials, at least be sure to make something that you can use often. Also, of course, it's okay for students to share or take turns with certain materials. So let's say you have only 20 copies of a short story, and you don't have access to a copy machine, or copies are expensive. I know this is the situation for a lot of you. Well, of course, one easy solution is that they can share. They can work in pairs. And so now all of a sudden you have 40 people able to read the same story. But let's say you have 80 students. Maybe you could have 40 of those students reading the story while the other 40 are doing another activity or reading another story, doing something else, and then trade. So in this way, 80 people have been able to do the story in some way. And finally, meaningfully squeeze as much as you can out of each activity. So if you have 20 copies of this short story, it doesn't have to be done with after they read it. Ask yourself, what else can I do with this? Maybe you could have them, after they read it, then change the ending of the story, turn it into a writing activity. Maybe you could collect the stories again, I can't see them anymore, and do a dictation using some of the sentences from that story. Maybe they could talk to a partner, do a quick pair share, and talk about predictions for what happened next. It's totally possible to get a whole semester's worth of activities out of just a small amount of materials if you can think about how you can squeeze more in a meaningful way out of what you do have. So again, just to keep this positive tone, instead of thinking about, oh my gosh, I'll never be able to do this because I don't have enough materials, I don't have the technology, I don't have enough of this or that, think about, what can you do? I don't know about you, but sometimes I have a class that starts at 3 o'clock, for example, and students come strolling in at 5 past, 3:10, 3:15. Do any of you experience late arriving students? Let me know if I'm not alone. Yes. Iraq, Mexico, lots of people unfortunately experience the same thing. Of course we do. So it's a challenge, I know. And we don't want to wait until those students get there, because if we wait till 3:15, 3:20 to start, students are going to realize, oh, she's not really going to start on time, so I guess I don't have to get here on time anyways. I can get here late just like everybody else. We're wasting the time of the people that are getting there. Also, I know that it's hard to go ahead and start the class and then you have to re-explain the directions 5 times as new people walk in. That's not a good use of time either. So I think that we need to, as the slide suggests here, start with something meaningful but not crucial at the designated start time. I have some ideas on the next slide that I'd like to show you. Some ideas for starting the class. Perhaps a pair share. This is a very simple thing that any of us could implement even tomorrow. Probably a lot of you are already doing this. Have students turn to a neighbor and discuss a question related to the theme of the day. This way, latecomers show up and see, oh my gosh, the class has already started. They see people are already in a conversation and they feel as if they've missed something, which they have. And they might, some students anyway, might feel a little bit guilty about that, and it might inspire them to come on time next time. And it's not the sort of thing that you have to re-explain the directions. Once they get in, they'll join a group or find a partner, and they can just join in. And it's not the end of the world if they miss part of the conversation. And then you can move on from there with more people in attendance. Another possibility could be a chart paper question. So you could post a question related to the theme of day on chart paper or on the board and have students write their answer as they walk into class. You can see that this student in the picture is answering the question, what are you going to do this weekend? Maybe you have a few questions like this posted around the room. As students walk in, they can answer. Some students will write just a quick thing. Others will write more. Some students who are strolling in late might miss the opportunity to write something, but really that's okay. Once you're ready, you can continue with the next activity. I'd like to give you some very simple activity ideas for during the class. These are the kinds of things that you can incorporate into whatever it is that you're doing in class even tomorrow. The stand-up, sit-down. So this could be the sort of thing where, let's say you're studying members of the family. You could say, okay, stand up if you have a sister. Anybody that has an uncle, stand up. Now sit down. Anybody that has a cousin, now stand up. Sit down. The example was members of the family, but I'm sure you could think of how to adapt that to whatever theme that you're talking about. Another way to use the stand up, sit down is to listen to a song, maybe a song that has a word that comes up again and again and again. Let's say that the word is sunshine. Ask the students to stand up every time it says sunshine and then sit down. So even if you have a class of 50, 80, 200 people, everyone can stand up and sit down without any problem. Think about how you could adapt this into your class. Next is the listen and repeat. Some people call it a parrot activity. Some teachers have said to me, the listen and repeat, isn't that kind of old? Isn't that what people used to do? They're not doing it anymore. And yeah, it is old. People have been doing that for a while. But I think as long as it's not the only thing that you're doing, it's still worthwhile. It's still a good tool. And so this is something that you could do even 3 times in every single class. Have them listen and repeat maybe a list of vocabulary words, a dialogue, some key phrases, 3 or 4 times during every class. And no matter how many students in your class, everyone is listening and repeating. Everyone gets a chance to talk. And that's the goal, of course, in a language class. I see in the chat box, Karina from Mexico, what is a parrot activity? Parrot activity is the listen and repeat. It's the same thing, just 2 names for the same activity. So it's just what I'm describing right now. Old but useful. Exactly. I agree. Another thing that I want to mention about the listen and repeat is that some teachers have said that, well, that's nice for the people that participate, but some people refuse to participate. I have only the 5 people in the front row are actually listening and repeating, and nobody else is doing it. Well, nobody else is doing it unless you require that they do it. And so if you do the listen and repeat and only 5 people do it and then you move on to the next thing, well, the rest of the class understands the message that they don't actually have to do it. But think about it. You're the teacher. If you want them to be doing this, then you need to make them do it. You need to have them do it. It's not as if just because they don't like taking a test that you don't give them tests anymore. You do. If you feel like this is what you want them to do, then make a joke about it. Just say something like, okay, I ask you all to listen and repeat. I want to hear all of your voices, not just the people in the front row. So we're going to do this again and again and again until I hear everyone's voice. You can be funny about it. You can say it with a smile on your face and really send the message that you want to hear everyone's voice. And in time, they'll get that message. Finally, twos to fours I'd like to explain, and on the next slide I've kind of given a diagram to explain what I mean by this. This is an activity called twos to fours. So let's say you put students into pairs. You want them to create a new ending for a story that you read. So you put them into pairs and you say, go ahead, spend 5 minutes with your partner, think about a new ending for the story, and draw a picture to represent your idea. But the thing is, if you then listen to everyone's idea, the idea that every single pair in your class has, that could take a really long time in a large class. And when you're sitting there waiting a long time for your turn, that can be agonizing. It can be boring. And when students feel that way, when they feel bored, they can get distracted, they can get involved in side conversations or other things. So that's something that, of course, we want to avoid. But at the same time, if you ask them to do something like create a new ending to the story, and then you do nothing with it, they understand that message. They understand that, okay, she's asked us to do this, but she's not going to do anything with it. She's not going to ask us for our answers. So I guess we don't really have to do it. That's not what you want either. So twos to four is the perfect solution for this. You give them the 5 minutes to do whatever it is you've asked them to do. And then you have those partners stay together and join another pair of partners. So now they're a group of 4. You can see in the diagram that the AB goes with another AB, and now they become a group of 4, AB, AB. They can share their ideas with the other team and listen to the other team's ideas. You, as the teacher, can be mingling around, walking around the classroom, hearing some of the ideas. Of course, you won't catch all of them. You probably won't get a chance to hear from everybody. But I think you'll hear enough to know that people have the right idea. You'll hear enough to know that people are coming up with ideas. And perhaps at the end, you could have a few people, a few pairs share their ideas and pick them randomly and then move on. In this way, everyone has a chance to share their idea. Everyone is meaningfully occupied. Nobody is waiting for their turn. I'd like to give you some additional activity ideas, and I've explained all of 5 of these in more detail on the following slides. As a preview, I'm going to be talking about the mix and mingle, a student interview chart, a fishbowl activity, TED Talks conversations, and poster sessions. As I said, you'll see these in more detail on the following slides, and this PowerPoint will be available to you later if you want to go back and see the steps again. All of these activities can be modified for various levels, various sizes, also various ages. Some people say, oh, these kinds of activities are just for children, and I assure you that I've done activities like this in all different age groups. Right now I'm teaching university, academic English classes, and this is what I'm doing. So no matter what your setting, you can modify these activities to work for you. Here's the mix and mingle, and you can see a picture of some students in Peru doing this activity. So you start by writing an open-ended question on the board that's appropriate for your level or your theme. And tell them that in a second they should stand up, find a partner, ask this question, listen for their answer, vice versa. Before you say go, tell them how you're going to get their attention back at the end. Are you going to turn the lights on and off? Are you going to ring a bell? Are you going to clap your hands? Let them know in advance how you plan to get their attention back, and ask them to please pay attention to signal so that you can move on to the next thing efficiently. So you do one partner, one question. Then write the second question on the board and have them say goodbye to their current partner, hello partner, and discuss the second question. From my experience, it's kind of important to just write one question on the board at a time, because if not, sometimes people get confused and they discuss all 3 questions with the same partner. And actually you want them to have different partners for each question. So you do the same thing, 3 pairs, 3 questions, and then tell them in advance that when they're finished that they should then sit down. After they do sit down, check in with a few people, as you did with the twos to fours activity. Check in with a few people and ask them about what their partner told them. This ensures that they actually were listening to what their partner said. So, Sonia, what did your partner do last night? Felipe, what did your partner do last weekend? Whatever it is that the question were, ask them what their partner said. People are commenting that this can be noisy, and you're absolutely right. And we're going to talk about that. It's a great point that some of these activities can be noisy, and that can be challenging. And we're going to talk about some strategies for that coming up soon. Here is a further explanation of the mix and mingle, which I have just explained. So if you want to come back later and see the step-by-step, you can come back and use this. This is the student interview chart. Here's an example. The questions are, this question is always, what is your name? And again, this is another great way to make sure that the students are practicing with each other's names. Next questions happens to be from me. In this example, what are you going to do after class? What are you going to do tomorrow? What are you going to do next weekend? Of course, you can imagine that you can change these questions to fit the level and the theme of your class. So it's not just a going to activity, that's just my example. No matter what the questions are, have them listen and repeat the questions before you begin. They should give them the directions that in a second, when they all have the chart ready, they're going to be standing up, find partner, asking their partner all of these questions, and writing down the key word of their answer. So students should answer the question in a complete sentence. You could model that. But then they don't have to write down the whole sentence. That could take a long time. So for example, a student asks their partner, what are you going to do after class? He answers, after class I am going to do my homework. And so the student could write down homework. They complete the interview with the next two questions and then find a different partner and ask them the same questions. Once they finish all the questions for all three people, they sit down. Now, one thing to keep in mind, this is something I'm going to mention a couple of times in this webinar. It's important that you keep everybody meaningfully occupied. People are going to finish this sort of activity at a different pace. Some people are going to finish long before anyone else has gotten even to the first interview. And that can be dangerous because they're just sitting there getting bored now. And also the other students that haven't finished are feeling nervous or maybe feeling uncomfortable that others are starting to finish. And they might be tempted to rush through or spit. You don't want that either. So of course, you're wandering around the classroom, you're hearing, you have a pretty good idea of what people are doing and who's finished. And so if you notice people are finishing, you can go over and give them an additional task to keep them meaningfully occupied. So it could be that they just wrote a keyword for the answer, homework, but you could have them go ahead and write full sentences about each of the people that they interviewed. So they could be sitting there writing, Sonia is going to do her homework after class, for example, while everyone else finish up the interview, and then you can move on together. By the way, this is another example of when everyone's done, you can then ask them about the person that they talked to. Not only does it ensure that they actually did talk to somebody, but when you're practicing grammar as we are here, this is just a way to practice the grammar in a different way. So when they did the interview, they said, what are you going to do after class? And they answered, I am going to la la la. Now when you're getting their answers, when you're checking in with them about it, they have to answer in a different way. She is going to la la la. So a different way to practice the grammar, which is useful. The next activity I'm going to talk about is a fishbowl activity. So think about these fish in this fishbowl. Fish swim around in a fishbowl, and everyone is just looking at them. We're watching them. That's why it's called a fishbowl activity, because the fish are swimming around, and the rest of us are watching them. So in an English class, that means that in a fishbowl activity, some people are actively engaged in one activity or one conversation, and the rest of us are watching them and listening to them. That's what a fishbowl activity means. So here's an example of what you might do for a fishbowl activity. You can modify it to work for you. In advance, you could give people some conversation starters, such as, I predict that, la la la. I was surprised that, blah blah blah. It struck me that, cha cha cha. Give them some conversation starters. Then, maybe in groups of 5 or 10, give them something to read, maybe an article to read, maybe a video to watch, something that everyone in that group does together. The next day in class, Each group has a turn to be in the fishbowl, so to speak. That means that they're in the middle of the room and they're having their group discussion. You can give some guidelines such as everyone has to participate in the conversation, that sort of thing. But instead of just sitting there waiting for their turn, the rest of the people that are not in the conversation are watching them and taking notes about what they're saying. They're listening very carefully to their conversation and they're trying to write down exactly what each person says. This means that people have practice having a group conversation, a group discussion, and people also have practice listening and note-taking. In this way, everyone is actively engaged in the activity and nobody is sitting around waiting their turn. Nobody is waiting passively, as Jay says. That's a good way to say it. Everyone's engaged. This is the description of the fishbowl activity for you to check later. By the way, before I talk about the TED Talks, somebody has commented, Leticia has said, that sounds time-consuming for a large class. It could be. If you have 100 students in your class, even if they're in groups of 10, that's 10 groups. That could be time-consuming. But it could be that this is the kind of thing that you do one group each class, and so that spreads it out a little bit. And so maybe you're doing a TED conversation, one group goes at the beginning of each class, and then you move on to other activities, so they're not doing this for the whole class. I'm glad that you said that because I think that could be a good way to organize it. Next, I'd like to talk about TED Talks conversations, and I'd like to know if anyone has heard of TED Talks. These are discussions or speeches that you can hear online. So in the chat box here, you'll be seeing the website, TED Talks. These are talks about all kinds of different themes, and they vary in length from just a couple of minutes to 2 minutes long. There's all kinds of different lengths, all kinds of different topics. They're usually informative, inspiring talks that are given in front of a live audience, but they're recorded, and we online, if you have access to the internet, can watch them very easily. If you don't have access to the internet, or if your students don't have access to the internet, I have plenty of alternatives for how you could do an activity like this. So please stay tuned and think about how you can make it work for you. So what I do for TED Talks is that I assign people an ongoing homework assignment that every week they have to do a listening log. And so sometime during the week they can choose when. They can choose a TED Talk to listen to. This is nice because they can choose the topic that's interesting to them. If they want to hear about soccer, they can hear about soccer. If they want to hear about education, if they want to hear about being an introvert or an extrovert, whatever they want to listen to, they can choose. It's okay if you don't have internet at school. Some students can go to an internet cafe after school, or if internet is just not a possibility at all, I'll tell you some other ideas afterwards. Anyways, they listen to this conversation. Everyone's listening to a different thing. And what I ask them to do is to write down a brief summary of what they listened to, ask them what it made them think about. So how can they connect to this theme? What is it making them think about? And then if they had been there to hear this speech live, what question could they have asked the speaker? Those are the 3 things I ask my students to do, but of course you can change this. Think about what's right for you. So I do this once a week, as I said. So they have the whole week. They can manage their time, figure out a time to listen to a TED Talk. And then on Fridays they come in. Everyone has their summary and put them into partners. And they talk about what they listened to. Their partner pays attention, maybe even take notes about what they listened to. Then I put them into a larger group, maybe a group of 10. And I have them report back about what everyone in the group listened to. So each person tells what their partner listened to. So you can see that this is a speaking activity, it's a listening activity, it's also a writing activity because they had to take notes. Everyone has to be paying attention. Everyone is actively engaged. And I have them do this once a week, and then I only collect their work maybe once a month. So they do it 4 times in the month and only collect it 1 time. But I collect it randomly, sporadically. They don't know when I'm going to collect it. So they have to do it all 4 times. And I think they learn from it. They get a lot out of it. But I'm not troubled with so much homework to correct because I'm only correcting every fourth one. This activity could be good to practice reported speech. Excellent comment, Maria from Mexico. Good way to incorporate grammar. Yeah, my partner told me that she listened to la la la. Great idea. Here's a description of the TED Talks conversations, but alternatives. Maybe you don't have internet, your students don't have easy access to internet at all. No problem. Alternatively, you could have them read an article, listen to something on the radio, anything. Just tell them to listen to the radio for 10 minutes and be able to come back and tell their partner about it. They could even, if they have nothing, they could observe a scene in town, go sit in the center of town and just watch something, watch the town go by for 10 minutes, and then be able to come back and tell their partner what they saw, what they heard, what they smelled. The important part is the discussion afterwards. Poster sessions. For poster sessions, I put students into pairs, and I assign a theme of what they should create a poster about. In my case, I give them a paper and some markers, but of course it could be just a scratch piece of paper, it could be a pen, and I'll tell you some other ideas for even modifying that if you have none of those materials. But first, let me tell you about the way that I usually do it. In pairs, I have them create a poster using a combination of keywords and pictures. They can be creative with it. And maybe the theme is something like, tell us about a hobby that you share in common, or tell us about how you celebrate a certain holiday in your culture. You assign them the theme, and they work together to create a poster using keywords and pictures to describe their idea. Next, have them establish who is partner A and who is partner B. And after they finish their poster, maybe they need about 10 minutes to actually create their poster. Once everyone's done, have them hang up their poster all around the room, have them spread them out as much as possible, and have partner A stand next to their poster. Meanwhile, all of the partner Bs are going to be moving around the classroom, listening to other people, other partner As, explain their poster. So they'll move from poster to poster and listen to lots of different people talking. This means that all partner As are having a chance to tell about their poster to lots of different people, lots of different times, but only in groups of probably 2 or 3 people are only going to be listening at one time. This is great for many reasons. It's great because they have the opportunity to practice public speaking, but it's not the pressure of speaking in front of the whole class. They're only speaking in front of a few people at a time. So even the shyer students can do that comfortably. And also, they get the chance to say it many different times. They're explaining their poster several different times. And so I think that they're able to speak more naturally after they've had practice with it. Next, as you can imagine, the partner Bs take a turn standing next to their poster, and all of the partner A's get a chance to move around the classroom. You could think about other things as a follow-up, such as for homework, after they've heard all the posters, for homework they could write about their favorite poster. You could be having them take notes as they're listening to every poster, and for homework they could write about several of them. You could give a reward for the most creative poster or the most engaging speaker. You could make it a requirement that they ask a question to every presenter. Think about what might work for you. You could imagine that this sort of thing can take a pretty long time, and I'm saying that in a positive way. I think that's a great thing that you could spend a whole class period get everyone talking, and then doing plenty of follow-up activities to incorporate writing, reading, grammar, etc. Here's the description of poster sessions. By the way, the alternative that I was thinking of, if you don't have any materials at all, if extra paper, markers, pens is not an option for you, what about having the partners bring in an object? Maybe they can think about some object that's special to them and bring it in. So they don't even have to create anything. They're simply taking turns telling about a certain object. It could be anything. It could be a pen from their pocket. It doesn't matter. It could be anything that they could just describe in some way. Tell a story about how they got it. why they use it, things like that. Here's a tip for all of these activities, any activity that you do, especially in a large class. We need to always make sure that everyone is meaningfully occupied. Waiting for your turn in a large class can be agonizing. So as I was saying in the example of finding an extra activity for people when they finish the student interview chart, having them write sentences about it, for example, that's a great thing. No matter what activity that you're doing, think about what can I do, what can I have the students who finish first do next that's still connected to the activity, it's not totally random, but to keep them engaged and to keep them busy while everyone else finishes. By the way, I had a comment in the chat box that said some of my class is so full that they just physically can't move. I can't get them to move around this way. Of course, know that that's a huge challenge. So if you can't have them moving around, as you saw in some of my pictures, they can turn to the person next to them, and then the next activity or for the next interview, turn to the person to the other side, the person in front of them, the person in back of them. There are ways that they can do it without even moving around if that's just totally impossible. But if the challenge is that they just won't do it, that they refuse to do it, that's a different challenge. Because if you want them to do it, if it's something that you want them to do, and you think the space that you have and the scenario that you have will allow them to do it, then you're the teacher, and you can make sure that they do it. So just because they don't want to do an activity, I don't think is a good reason to stop doing certain activities like this. I think with practice, with time, and with lots of encouragement, we can have them do it. We can have everyone do it and insist on that. Also, people have commented about, what about shy students? And I think shy students, that's exactly the reason why some of these activities that I've just mentioned are great. Because really, I mean, I wouldn't raise my hand and ask a question or make a comment in a classroom of 250 people. I really wouldn't. I would be one of those shy students. So the reason that we do these activities is to get them into smaller groups so that they can participate, and making sure that everyone has a job. You know, you can imagine the poster session. You're either partner A or you're partner B, but you're one or the other. And so no matter what, you have a job and you need to participate. But I think in a safe way, without the pressure of being asked to speak in front of the whole class. Of course, it's scary for anyone. So that's why these activities are good, especially for the shy students. Here's an important reminder. Some activities are done to practice accuracy, and others are done to practice fluency. Both are important, so there's a time and a place for both. I say this because lots of teachers have said to me, you know, I hesitate to do the kinds of activities that you've just described because how am I supposed to listen to everybody's answer? If everyone's talking at the same time, how can I possibly listen to what every single student is saying? They might make a mistake, I might not catch it, and I might not be able to correct them, and so maybe it's better not to do it. I want to be able to hear everyone's answer. It's true that there are times when you do need to hear everyone's answer. Maybe after you've just been practicing a specific grammar point, you want to know if people have gotten it. You want to hear people. That's when you're looking for accuracy. Also, you need to give people a grade in guessing. You need to give people an assessment for this class. We'll talk about that in a minute. So there are times when you need to check in and really see how people are doing. But there's lots of other times when you just to get students talking. You're not going to hear every answer. People are going to make mistakes. That's great. You want them to make mistakes because you want them to be taking risks and learning from it. And of course, you're wandering around the classroom listening to some people. You're not going to hear every answer, and that's okay. So just relax about that. Sometimes you're looking for accuracy. Sometimes you're looking for fluency. Both are equally as important. People have commented about noise control. Of course, this is a concern. You have other teachers teaching in classrooms next to you. Sometimes you have people come in and complain and say, you need to be quiet. Of course, it's very easy for a room of 80 people to get loud very quickly. But let's not let that be a reason to not do these kinds of activities. Let's think of some strategies so that we can do them in a way that makes everyone comfortable. So we talked about doing the listen and repeat. How about doing the listen and repeat with a whisper voice? It's silly, of course, and might make the students laugh when you ask them to do that, but that's great. They're laughing. That's perfect. But they're still getting a chance to pronounce the words or the phrases or the dialogue, and it keeps them a little bit quieter. No problem. Listen and repeat with a whisper voice. Sounds good. Also, some pre-established classroom gestures could be helpful. Probably there's several things you find yourself saying many times during every class, such as, everyone get out your book, put your books away, please stand up, things like this that you constantly are listening to your voice say, and maybe have to shout because it's such a large number of people. So think about the things that you find yourself saying again and again and again, and think about how you can save your own voice, save yourself from having to shout, by doing a charade, by doing a gesture, so acting out, getting out your books, and introduce these things to the students at the beginning of the course so that they know what you mean by doing each of these things. Similarly, when I was talking the activities, establish what you want people to do when they're done. I mean, to get their attention back. So before you say go for a group activity or a talking activity, before you say go, before they begin talking, be sure that they know and you know what you're going to do to get their attention back. Maybe it's turning the light on a few times, or ringing a bell, or clapping your hands. Make sure they know what you're going to do, and ask them to please listen for this signal so that you can all move on and make good use of your time. Actually, these first two tips are kind of related, because one thing that I just did one time by accident to get their attention back actually turned out to work really well, and now I do it all the time. It's that when people are in pairs or groups doing a speaking activity and the room is getting loud, and I'm ready for them to finish, or I'm ready to quiet them down and have their focus back on me, I just start doing a listen and repeat activity. I put maybe 5 or 10 vocabulary words on the board, and I just start saying them and have people repeat. And maybe at first only 1 or 2 people are repeating, but by the time you get to your list, by the time you get to the end of your list, everyone is listening and repeating. You haven't had to shout them to pay attention to you. It just happened naturally. And now all of a sudden our focus is back on you, and you can move on to the next activity. Another tip for noise control is to play soft music while they're working. So if you have them in pairs or groups doing a speaking activity, or doing any activity really, you can play some soft music, something like something soft and soothing, and I think it just kind of calms down the class, brings the energy down a little bit. And finally, this might sound silly, but that screeching sound of the chairs and desks really drives me crazy, and it can get really loud in a big class. And so one thing that I have tried before is to cover up those chair legs with duct tape maybe, or even a couple pairs of socks. And it makes that moving around of chairs sound much quieter, and it has been really helpful. I wonder what your ideas about noise control could be. I'd like to hear some of your ideas. Music may disturb, one person says. It's true. I think that it might. It depends on the kind of music. And it's true that for people it might disturb, and for others it might not. So different classes, you'll have different results. Try it a couple of times, and it might work for you. If it doesn't, try something else. Elevator music is a great idea. That's just what I'm talking about. Sometimes they complain because it's not modern music. That's okay. You're the teacher. And, you know, at other times you might find occasion to play the music they like, and at some times you're going to play the kind of music that will quiet them down. So there's room for everything. Great ideas. Thank you. A lot of you answered the poll that was offered before this webinar started, and a huge number of you, the majority, said the most challenging thing about large classes is classroom management. So I'd like to spend the next couple slides talking about tips for classroom management. First, I suggest having systems in place for participation. It sounds like a simple thing, but sometimes students don't know how they're supposed to participate. They don't know what they should do if they want to make a comment or ask a question, so they might just start shouting it out. over somebody else. And so think about and introduce to the students what you do want them to do when they have a comment or question. Do you want them to raise their hand? Do you want them to wait until you call on them? Do you want them to stand up when they have something to say? Whatever it is, establish it. Let them know beforehand at the beginning of class. A system for getting students' attention back. Like I was saying, maybe turning the lights on and off, a bell. Other people have some great ideas here in the chat box. Counting 1 to 10, Karina from Mexico says. Great. So establish your system for getting students' attention back. And the key is to tell them beforehand. Before you start their activity, what are you going to do to get their attention back, and have them be looking for that. Let students know what they should do when they're done with this activity. Sometimes the chaos can come from the fact that they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. They don't know when they're finished with an activity, and they don't know what to do when they're done. So they just start talking to their friend. They don't know what else to do. We haven't told them. So as you're giving the directions, before you say go, tell them what they're supposed to do when they're done. Should they sit down when they're done? Should they put down their pencil? Should they look up to you? So 2 parts. How are they going to know when they're done? So student interview chart, for example, they know they're done when they have interviewed 3 people. And then what should they do when that happens? They should sit down. So establish those things before you start the activity. Cross their arms, give a thumbs up. Great ideas. Excellent. Perhaps having team leaders could be a good way to manage the classroom. You could assign a leader to every group of 10, for example, and think about what jobs they could do to make things easier for you. Perhaps they could take attendance. You should not be taking more than 1 minute out of every class to be taking attendance. So think about how you could make this process go quicker. Maybe team leaders can take attendance for their group. Maybe team leaders can collect the homework for their group. What other ideas? I'm sure you have other ideas for how you can use a team leader. Love to hear those. Collecting homework, having students manage themselves. They can check the time. So if you have a group activity, the leader be in charge of keeping them on track for time. Great. If they are absent, you could have junior team leader. Don't be afraid to, as another classroom management tip, to offer the possibility of earning a reward, a bribe. Perhaps you could say, if I see X, Y, and Z in this class, and you will have no homework for tonight, for example. In the past, I tried doing this per course. I would say things like, if I see this, this, and this at this course, at the end of the course, we'll have a party. Although parties are fun, I think that it was too big of a chunk of time. I think that it works better when it's a smaller amount of, and so maybe it's per class or per week or something, so that they can actually remember what they're supposed to be doing and actually experience getting bored, and then look forward to earning the next one. So you have to tell them exactly what it is that you're looking for and what you need to see. So for example, if everyone can finish up their conversation within 30 seconds of me turning on and off the light, and everyone can get homework out within 30 seconds of me asking you to, then tonight we will have no homework, for example. So they know what they need to do. If they achieve it, they'll be so happy, and they'll be more and more likely to try to work towards that for next time. The reward can be anything. I gave you the example of homework, but it can be verbal, it could be a stamp, whatever, chocolates I see coming in handy, whatever it is that you think could be tempting for students. About the team leader, somebody is commenting that the students could elect their own team leader. I think that's an awesome idea. I think that's a great idea. Have them elect their own team leader. I think that gives even more meaning to it. This is probably my most important classroom management tip. Don't accept less than what you're hoping for. Do classroom routines until they get it right. So let's say every class you ask them at some point in the class to get out notebooks, let's say. And you ask them to get out their notebooks, and it's taking them forever, it's taking them a really long time. They understand that as a signal that now they can talk freely with their friends. So they're talking, it's getting out, it's taking forever, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, this is not what I wanted, but we're so busy, I have so much to do, just move on, and it's fine. We'll just continue. Well, if you accept that, if you accept the way that they did that, then chances are tomorrow when you ask them to do it again, they're going to do it the exact same way. And so I think it's worth your time to say, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, that's not exactly how I wanted you to do it. Why don't you all go ahead and put your books back, and I'll show you what I meant by that. You can model it, you can act it out, you can play with it, exaggerate it, and show them exactly what you want, that you want it quickly, you want it quietly, and have them try it again and again and again. And you might spend, like I said before, you might spend the entire class period doing this sort of thing. It might seem silly, but chances are the next day they're going to do it right. And in that way, you're actually going to save time. So whatever it is that you need them to do, make sure they do it in that way. You're the teacher. Make sure they get it right. Thinking about some ways to group. Here's just one suggestion, and I'm curious to hear your ideas too about grouping. One thing that I do at the beginning of class, as they're walking in, I pass out colored cards as they enter the room. I also post colors in different sections of the room. So students should sit with the people that have the same color section where their color is posted. So if they walk in and receive a red card, as you see here, they should look around the room and see where the other red card is posted. They should sit down in that section with their group who also have red cards. It might be that you're not going to even start with a group activity. It might be that you're doing the group activity much later in the class. But that's okay. They can still sit there, and that means that when you're ready to do that group activity, they're already in their group. You don't have to waste time having them around and move their stuff to get into a different group. They're already there. I think this sort of thing is great because I think it's helpful to have students working with different people. Usually it just happens naturally. Students end up sitting in the same seats even if they don't have assigned seats, they naturally sit in the same seats, and that means that if you have them turn to a partner, they're usually talking to the same partner. So grouping like this and with lots of other different grouping strategies helps to ensure that they're working with different people in different classes, and they get to know different people, they learn from one another, and I think that's a very good thing. By the way, in the previous webinar that I did, somebody asked the question, if you put people into groups to work on a project, how do you know that one person isn't going to do everything and some people are just going to sit there? Excellent question. I'm sure we've all experienced that. And so here are some things that I've tried. You can give everyone a civic task, so the sort of thing where you say, you're the speaker, you're the recorder, that kind of thing. Everyone has a different job. Another that I've tried is that I ask them for feedback about each other later. So the first time I tried it, I said something like, did everyone in the group participate equally, or something like that? And of course, everyone was very nice to each other, and they said yes. So I realized I had to rephrase my question. And I asked Ed, list each person in your group and tell me what each person in your group did for this project. And so that was kind of easier to cover. I mean, it made it for people to cover for each other in that way. I wonder what your ideas are for making sure everyone in the group is doing their part. You ask them to grade either? Sure. Yeah. Visiting them closely, of course, that's a suggestion, Mohammed, that of course you're monitoring the groups. Maybe you're not hearing every word from every group at every moment, but you are moving around. And so with that moving around, I think you can get a pretty good sense if somebody is falling asleep or not paying attention. Absolutely. I'd like to talk about assessment, because a lot of these activities are talking about fluency activities where we're just getting them talking, which I mentioned, which is, of course, important, but know that there are times when you do need to assess the students You need to know how they're doing. You need to turn in their grades. How can you do that in a group that's so big? I want to think about ways that you could check homework efficiently. Could it be, for example, the team leader that collects the homework? Could it be that you give the correct answers to the team leader and they spend the first 5 minutes of class going over it with their team to make sure everyone has the right answers? And of course, a lot of times they won't have the right answers, and so the team leader can come to you and tell you what students are having trouble with, and that could let you know what you need to revisit. Could you have the correct answers posted on the wall? Could that be the sort of thing that they do as they're coming into class? So you have it posted and they're responsible for walking into class and checking their answers. And so that's a good way for them to be checking themselves. And of course, you also need to know how they're doing. And so maybe not every time do you have to collect their homework. That would be a lot of grading for you. But maybe randomly, sporadically, from time to time, you could collect the assignments. They're not going to know when you're collecting them, so they're going to do it every time. And maybe once every couple of days you collect an assignment. And then finally, find ways to keep students meaningfully occupied while you briefly meet with each student. So I know that there are times when you just need to talk with students, you need to have a one-on-one conversation, you need to see how much they're understanding and not understanding, and we need to keep the other 79 students busy while you do this. On the next slide, I'm going to give you an idea for this. Here's an activity to keep students meaningfully occupied. I call it the What's the Word activity. I'll explain it more carefully on the next slide. But for now, you can take a look at this example. I have small pieces of paper, maybe 20 to 30 per group of 10 students. Put them in an envelope. I make the words level appropriate. And students that are in a group of about 10, they have this envelope of about 20 to 30 vocabulary words, each on a different paper. When it's their turn, they take a word out of the envelope. They don't read it to the students in their group. They don't show it to them. They simply explain it. They describe the word and make people guess. So if this were a word, I would say to you, this is a fruit, it's yellow, monkeys like to eat it, what do you think it is? Banana. Banana, exactly. And so then I put that paper off to the side. The next person goes, picks the next word out of the envelope. If a student picks a word out of the envelope and they don't know it, no problem. Put it back, take another one. No big deal. Maybe somebody else in the group will know it. So it could be that you create the vocabulary words, you make these and put them in the envelope for people, or it could be that the student create these for themselves. Maybe their team is responsible for adding the new vocabulary words that you introduce every week to their envelope. And so then at the end of the week, they practice in the same way every time with their words. Here's the description of the What's the Word activity. Again, this is giving you, the reason for doing an activity like this is not only to practice vocabulary, but this is an example of something that students can do without you, essentially. So this could give you a chance to be working with an individual student or a small group of students to do some kind of assessment that I know you need to do. But while you're working on that, you can also, out of the corner of your eye, be checking for when students finish. And if you sense the group is finishing, you can go over and give them something additional to do. For example, okay, you've gotten through all of those words, now you can write a sentence for each of those words, or something like that to keep them busy so that you can do what you need to do. I know that some students and teachers don't have access to technology. I recognize that, but a lot of teachers do. And in fact, I know that there's going to be a webinar coming up that's talking exactly about how students can use their phones in class. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, I'll just give you this one idea about how you can use their phones or technology if you do have access to that. As a way to efficiently assess students' speaking ability, have them record a one-on-one conversation with a partner and send it to you. You can give them the criteria for the conversation, such as topics to discuss, grammar points that should be used, the length of time that you want them to speak, things like that. You decide. You can also have them assess themselves. So again, watching the one-on-one conversations of all 80 of your students, that's conversations, that can take you a really long time. You probably don't want to be doing that every week. So you could have them do it every week, either during class or on their own time after school as homework assignment. Have them do it maybe once a week. Have them assess themselves. Have them do a self-reflection after every conversation. And then randomly choose one per month that you're going to collect. So you are getting a chance to see how they're doing. They're having a chance to learn a lot from this opportunity. And you're making good use of everyone's time. I'd like to talk just a little bit about multi-level classes. I realize that this could be a session in and of itself. I think most classes are probably multi-level to some degree, and especially large classes. You're probably going to have a large variation of ability in your class, so it's worth mentioning. So I think we talked about grouping things randomly, like with the colored cards, for example, but with a multi-level class, there might be some occasions where you want to group them with purpose. So depending on the activity that you're doing, you might think about doing it in equal levels and doing modified activities. So you probably have a pretty good sense of which students are at the top of the class, which students need more time, and so forth. And so you can put them into groups in that way. And maybe the group that's struggling a little bit maybe write 3 sentences, while the other group is writing 10 sentences, for example. So think about ways for them to be doing similar things, but modified for their capabilities. And on other occasions for different activities, you might want them to be intentionally mixed so that they can help each other. So on purpose, you might put a high student, intermediate student, and a still needs work student all together in the same group so that they can work together. So depending on what you're doing, especially in a multi-level class, group them in different ways for different reasons. And probably even more than any other class, you might want to create independent work opportunities even more often so that you can focus on one group at a time. So you might do the kind of activity that I was just talking about with the vocabulary words in the envelope. And instead of using that time to assess one student at a time, you might take aside one that needs extra work, extra focus, and work with them for 10 minutes and then get back to the whole group. There's a related link that after this program you could check out. It's just a reading about multi-level classes that you might want to check out if this is a situation for you. I'd like to give some tips incorporating new activities. I think it's important to give directions effectively. Of course, that might sound obvious, but I think sometimes teachers can shy away from doing new activities because they get frustrated when giving the directions takes sometimes longer than it takes to do the activity. So that can happen the first time you do an activity. If students have never done the activity before, you might, in fact, take longer to give the directions than it takes to do it. But don't worry, because the next time you do a similar activity, they're going to have the idea. They're going to know, oh, yeah, this is the kind of thing where she has us stand up, interview people, and then sit down. Last time they did it for going to, this time they're doing it for the past tense, for example. So they kind of have the idea. So take them to give the directions effectively. Give the directions step by step. Ask comprehension questions after you give directions. For example, are we going to stand up or sit down for this activity? How many people will you interview? What should you do when you're done? Ask a couple comprehension questions after you give the directions before you get started. Also, try new ideas more than once. Maybe you do it the first time and it just totally doesn't work out. People don't understand, they're confused, it doesn't work. Don't give up. Think about how you could give directions more clearly. Think about what you could modify, change to make it go smoother. Maybe you do nothing differently, but just they've already done it once before helps. Do it again. Also, we all need to engage with the students during the activities. I know this is something that we're doing anyway. Even when they're doing a group activity, pair work, we're always walking around the classroom, making ourselves available to all corners of the room. But this is especially important in you're doing a new activity so that you can check in and make sure people are on the right track, make sure they have in fact understood, make yourself available to people who have a question, who didn't want to ask it in front of the whole class. Make yourself available to them. And finally, most importantly, be patient. It may take time for students to get used to and understand the value of these activities. If you have students who have always been in a traditional classroom where they're supposed to sit down and be quiet and listen and take notes to what you write on the board, it's going to take a little while for them to change and to realize, oh, this is a different kind of class, and realize that the activities doing are not meaningless games. They're actually very valuable activities that will help them learn. You can explain this to them time and time again, but also they have to experience it for themselves and realize, oh, I am learning from this. This is a silly game. I'm actually learning. And this teacher knows what he or she is doing. So patient. Just be patient for that. And keep trying. We all need to revisit classroom expectations when necessary. Remember the 3 expectations that we set at the beginning of the year? Sometimes we post them so that sometimes we can go back and revisit them if needed. So you could say something like, remember what we said about getting to class time? How do you think we're all doing with that? A heart-to-heart discussion couldn't hurt, and humor couldn't help. I'm going to give you an example. So you know that one of my challenges in my class right now is that students constantly come to class with their cell phone, and they're using their cell phone for unrelated activities in my class. This is a challenge for me. And so I talk about it, and they go away for a couple of days, and then they always come back. So the other day I came into my class and I said, listen, I want to tell you a story about my daughter Gabriella. She's 2. And every morning she wakes up and comes out into the living room, and she goes right ahead and stands up on the coffee table. And I say, Gabriella, please don't stand on the table. And she gets off, she gets straight back on again. And after a couple of times we'll stand there, say, go ahead and take that table away. And I tell my students, I do it this way because she is 2. Excuse me for a second. I need to pause my mic.
Hi everyone, we realize there is a sound problem. We'll fix it in one moment.
Sorry about that, everyone. We're starting back up again. Okay. So I'm just telling a simple story about having to tell my daughter something a million times and eventually taking something away from her. And I tell my students, I do this because she is 2. You are not 2. And I could go ahead and take things away, but I don't want to treat you like you're 2. I want to treat you like the age that you are. And so please just do me a favor and listen to this request and keep your phones away. I think that a funny story like that can be helpful. A heart-to-heart session can be useful. I also think that once in a while, reminding them that you are in fact a real person, not just their teacher, you are a real person, by telling a real story like this can help them connect with you a little bit and realize that we're all here, we're all trying our best. And I think it can be useful. I talk a lot in all of my programs about peer observation or observation, and I think this is super important. It makes us nervous. It's not our best day, we're nervous about it, but it's so worthwhile. This example, peer observation, in this case, I'm not talking about your administrator coming in. I'm not talking about somebody coming in to tell you what you're doing well and what you need work on. I'm simply talking about having somebody come in to tell you what they see, an extra pair of eyes on your teaching to see things that you don't see. So they're simply coming in, joining in the class, and telling you, hey, maybe you think that all of the students when they're in the group work are doing what you've asked them to do. But your peer observer might say, well, actually, the activity in 2 minutes and spent the rest of the 5 minutes talking about something else. So I think you gave them too long to work on this particular activity. Something like that. So I invite you to invite another teacher or somebody else that you know into your class to simply sit down and write down notes about exactly what they see. Again, I see some comments in here. It's not, that kind of observation is not about criticism at all. It's just simply about observation. What do you see? That's all. And so it shouldn't make us nervous. It should just be very comfortable. You can do the same for them. Have it go both ways. Finally, super important to take care of ourselves. We need as much energy as we can for our classes, for these large classes. So these are very simple things to hear. Eat right, exercise, get plenty of sleep. But these are the easiest things to forget about. And so we need to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves and model this for our students. Have them see you eating healthy snacks, not chips, maybe a banana. Have them see you for a walk after class, even if it's just a 10-minute walk. Model this for your students and encourage them to do the same. Hopefully they're seeing this and hearing about this in their family, but it's also important to hear it again from you. By the way, I'm looking at my notes and making sure I'm saying everything that I want to say. And I just wanted to say one more thing about expectation. Another classroom expectation that I often include is that my students will participate with joy in class. And I tell my students it doesn't mean that I want to ignore any problems that you might be having. I don't mean that I don't want to hear if you're in trouble at home or if you're having trouble with an assignment. If you have something that I can help you with, believe me, I'm here for you. However, in our class, I would like these smiling faces, and I'll do my best to show you my smiling face, no matter what's going on for me. And so my expectation is that you'll class every day with a smile on your face, not putting your heads on the table and, grunting when you have to do an assignment. This means participating joyfully. That's something that's super important to me and goes along with this theme of positive, healthy participation. And that brings us to the end of today's webinar. I thank you so much for your participation. I thank you for the good work that you're doing, and I look forward to continuing the conversation on the Ning. So see you there for common questions, and thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Let's give Vicki a challenge for many of us around the world. Teaching in general is challenging, and we acknowledge that teaching in large classes can be even more challenging. But the important thing is that we always try to make our classes better. Probably not ever perfect, but we can do better. So thanks so much, Vicki, for your great ideas, and thank you everyone that participated and shared your great ideas. We continue to look forward to hearing your ideas on the Ning.